This
Um,
conference will now be recorded.
Thanks to everyone that's here in person. I believe this is the very first in-person Habitat Restoration Consortium meeting because these started during the pandemic. So this is great for me to put faces with names, and I'm really glad to see all of you folks here. And I appreciate all of you trying to join us online, and I hope that all the AV stuff works. I think it will. Um, just a few housekeeping items for in the STEM Center. The bathrooms are over this way, through the breezeway, the two double doors. They look dark, but the lights go on, and then you can find your way there. Also on this side, if you haven't signed in, we have a sign-in sheet. We also have a draft habitat report card that I'm going to be talking about in a little bit, and some snacks. So feel free to grab some of those. It is lunchtime after all. Um, and on behalf of the Habitat Restoration co-chairs, which haven't gotten here yet, so I'm hoping that they didn't get lost, Jamie Swindez and Doug Robeson, I'd like to welcome you guys to the December Habitat Restoration Consortium. So first up, on the agenda, I'm going to be doing some summaries of the habitat restoration reporting um, that are recent to this year. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. Okay. Um, is someone here online? Are you online? Okay. You are? Okay. Can you see it? Okay. Okay, great. All right. So thank you for coming. My name is Carrie Flaherty-Wally. I'm the restoration ecologist for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. I've been in that role for just a little bit over a year, so I'm relatively new to it. So I've been meeting a lot of folks over the last year. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about kind of the history of our habitat tracking, and also some new results. So the goal for today, I'm going to quickly review our Habitat Master Plan targets and goals. And then I'm going to give an update on restoration progress within the last year. And then I'm going to highlight a couple of priorities that we have for restoration in 2024. We're also going to be talking about a few new data products and tools. So I'll get into that once we get into the presentation. So just to get you familiar with some of the data sources that we use for habitat tracking within the estuary program, mainly for our geospatial data, we use the Southwest Florida Water Management District databases that are basically aerial photography interpretation. So they're two different mappings, and folks in the room are way more familiar with them than I am. But the subtidal habitats are mapped every 2 years, and then the intertidal and supertidal habitats or land use land cover are updated every 2 to 3 years. And then in addition to that, through the estuary program, we actually collect restoration data from partners. If you remember me sending out an email to all of you around May, we receive all of those individual project information from partners, and then we report them to the EPA through this National Estuary Program reporting online tool, which I won't go into acronyms, but so we've been doing this annual reporting with the EPA since 2006, so that gives us kind of a yearly summary of what's happening in the watershed. Um, and then we are also trying to incorporate some other regional mapping products as well in our habitat tracking, which I'll talk about as well. So just in review, if you're not familiar with the Habitat Master Plan, this update that was done in 2020, we're not trying to get back to the habitats that we once have because we know that's not attainable. So basically, we're maximizing the potential. So, if there are habitat restoration opportunities out there, we want to take advantage of those. And through that, we define 10-year goals, so goals that we want to reach by 2030, and then 30-year goals that we want to reach by 2050. And the habitat types that we're tracking are up on the screen here. So several subtidal habitats, intertidal, and then supertidal habitats. So we're trying to track these different types over time. So again, this is a map that's out of a published report and also out of the Habitat Master Plan that talks about the existing conservation lands and potential restoration lands. And, you know, basically this report and manuscript went through and said, okay, how many native habitats do we have? How have they been changing over time? And which ones are should we prioritize for restoration? And if you see some of the pink areas, those are the ones that are within the coastal areas that we really want to take advantage of, especially in light of sea level rise. So those are the goals of the Habitat Master Plan. And what we've been doing over time is we've been updating that progress. So this table right here is currently where we're at. It has the current extent of habitat, and that's as of 2022 for the subtidal habitats and as of 2020 for the land use land cover, so for the intertidal and supertidal habitats. And then it also tells you, okay, here's the 2030 targets. If it's and then how much we have to go. So in the 2030 targets to go, if it's negative, that means that we're actually exceeding our 2030 targets, if that makes sense. So we actually are doing real well. And then, you know, if you look here, if we've got a substantial amount of acreage or linear miles to go, then those are the ones that we'd like to prioritize. And the 2030 targets are the ones that we're doing a lot of our tracking tools on, but we also want to keep in mind the 2050 goals, which some of them are very aggressive. So this table is great. You know, we can look at the numbers, but we also wanted to put this in kind of a graphical format so that it's a little easier for folks to understand. So if you pull out like one of these table layers, this is just an example. This is for oyster restoration progress. So the original Habitat Master Plan mapped it based on the 2018 mapping cycle, and there were 171 acres then. So that's the original extent. And then currently we actually have 228 acres. And for those of you that saw a presentation I did recently, this is actually updated as of this week. In addition to using the water management district layers, we also incorporated some of the most recently updated FWC oyster layers. They're based on the water management district, there are 210 acres of oysters, and then adding an additional 18 acres from the FWC mapping, we're actually meeting our target. So our target was 221, so we're meeting that, we're 7 above. But not to say that we need to stop doing our oyster restoration because our goal is very aggressive of 471 acres. So we really still need to be concentrating on that. And so one way that we wanted to kind of track this, this is based off the 2030 targets. And you guys, if you were here at the last December Habitat Restoration Consortium, you saw this same template for the report card. And it's color coded based on whether we're meeting the targets and whether we're actually on track to meet them based on the trends. So if we have a green color, the target is met, and the recent trend says that we're going to be achieving that by 2030. So green, the dark green is good. For the yellow, the target's met right now, but the trend suggests that the target in 2030 won't be achieved. So that's something that we need to watch. The light green, the target isn't met now, but based on the trends in the past several years, it looks like it's going to be achieved by 2030. And then in the red, the target's not met, and it probably won't be met by 2030 based on the trends that we see. So this is the newest version of our progress towards 2030 targets, and this actually incorporates 2022 subtitle data. So I'll just point out a few here. Seagrasses, as we know, went down significantly in acreage in the last mapping cycle. So you can see that seagrasses are in the red. The target is not met and won't be met by 2030 based on the progress that we see right now. The same you can see for total intertidal and salt marshes, and also for forested freshwater wetlands. But you can also see that there's a lot of habitats that we're doing rather well. We're obviously doing well in tidal flats because that's kind of what the seagrasses turn into. Then, like I mentioned before, the oyster bars, we're actually looking good for 2030, but we still need to keep an eye on it. Mangrove forests are doing well. As we know, they've been increasing in acreage with increasing temperatures, so mangroves are doing very well. So this is just kind of a quick snapshot so that we can look at, kind of interpret these data in a different way. So we want your feedback on if this is useful for you, and whether these ways of defining priorities are useful. So now into the annual reported data. So habitat projects have been reported in various ways since 1971. A lot of the projects, most of the projects prior to 2006, where we were required to report to EPA, were compiled during the Habitat Master Plan process. So we have information from this entire time period. And we've added on since 2020 all those annual reports. So you can see here on the map, these are all the locations of habitat restoration projects that have happened over that entire time period, and the ones in green are the ones that happened last year. These are the totals throughout time. So 826 projects, a large amount of acreage. So, and this is separated between restored habitats, enhanced habitats, which would be like prescribed burning, things of that nature. And then protected habitats are those that are like acquisitions. So land that hasn't been restored yet, but has been acquired for that purpose. And we've worked a lot in the last year on making sure that these data are correct and uniform across all of our data columns. So we're pretty confident in this data set. So starting in 2006, we started reporting to the EPA. So we actually can track these habitats based on the Habitat Master Plan designations of habitats. So these are the ones that I mentioned, the subtitle habitats and all the ones that are in the habitat report card. So you can see over time, we've actually had an increasing amount of projects and an increasing diversity of projects over time. Most of those have been in upland areas just by the amount of acreage. But you can see that we're doing real well in 2023. And here is the breakdown for this year's reporting cycle. We had 71 projects reported to us. 21 partners in all actually gave us information from their projects. So we really appreciate that. These data are only as good as the amount of information we get from our partners. We had actually 6 acquisitions that were reported, which is really great. 24 restored projects, 41 enhancement type projects, and the acreage that's restored was around 32,000 and miles about 1.5 miles. So you guys have been doing a lot of great work over the past year. Here's kind of the breakdown based on habitats. You can see the amount of acreage, the number of projects. We've got several projects in uplands and coastal uplands, some in non-forested freshwater wetlands, some seagrass projects, mangrove projects. We've got projects pretty much across the board. I will point out that there weren't any projects reported in low salinity salt marsh, salt barrens, hard bottom or forested freshwater wetlands. So those are some that we didn't have reports on, or at least they weren't designated as the major habitat that was reported. So if you remember when I sent out the Excel spreadsheets to all of our partners, we had added a column where you could designate what general habitat each of your projects fits into, and that's very useful to us in tracking in the habitat master plan. And then this is just kind of a breakdown of the last 3 years. 2021 and 2023 look relatively the same. Last year we had a little less projects reported, but that could be that those projects just didn't finish during that fiscal year time frame. So depending on timing, we might have more projects or less. But I would say in the recent years, probably around 60 to 70 projects is about the norm that's been reported to us. And then here are some of the contributing partners. Now, these are some of the ones that were like the main implementers of these projects, but there were several other partners that were additional to this. So you can see this is a huge collaborative effort across the watershed. So kudos to all of you. This is kind of our, pat on the back for all the restoration work that's been done over the past several years, or the past year. Oh, wrong way. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight a few projects that were reported this year. These are ones that actually sent me pictures. So if you want me to highlight your projects in the future, send me pictures. So one of the projects was at the Florida Youth Conservation Centers Network, where they put together a demonstration of several different living shoreline treatments and put in some educational signage. So that's a really useful place for folks to look at examples of restoration. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because it's right behind you, and Erica and Tom are going to talk about it a lot, but there was a living shoreline that was completed right here on this site. And then one of the enhancement projects that got reported this year was a prescribed burn at Boyd Hill, where they burned 40 acres within the preserve. So that's a good accomplishment as well. So we're getting all of these different types of reporting, whether it's enhancing already preserved habitat or restoring habitat that needs to be restored. So we did this last year where we kind of looked at the report card, and we looked at the projects that were reported to us in the last year and tried to focus on some priorities. So if you remember, the 3 ones in the red zone were seagrasses, salt marsh, and forested freshwater wetlands. So we're going to put those forward as priorities for the upcoming year. And then we just want to say keep it up on basically all of the habitats, but especially with the oyster bars. We know that we're meeting those targets right now, but we do have an aggressive goal. Also for uplands, we're making some progress on that, so keep it up. And then in our doing fine category, mangroves are doing well. So basically in prioritizing restoration, that's where we're landing right now. Okay, so finally, I just wanted to list out, we've got a lot of resources now, and we've been trying to organize them so that they're all in one place. So I just kind of want to go through them so that you guys know where they are. So we've got the Habitat Master Plan webpage that has all the information regarding that. And then over the last year, like I said, we've been incorporating that annual EPA reporting. We cleaned those data sets, matched them up with historical data sets, made sure that we didn't have repeated projects. And through that process, we've actually now archived them on an open source site. So that's really great. They're also going to be updated in the Water Atlas. So all these projects are going to be, the newest clean version. Also, for this year, we actually put together a data entry portal for partners. So instead of sending out an Excel spreadsheet, sending it back to me, and then I have to compile all the Excel spreadsheets, we put together a portal that we're going to want some feedback on. And then finally, if you haven't picked one up, we have a two-page report card that details progress as far as land use, and then on the back or on the front has progress based on the annual reporting. And there's links to where you can find all of these on our website here. But if you don't want to go back to this presentation to find all these links, if you go to our portion of the web page that has all of our meeting dates for the Habitat Restoration Consortium, all these links are right here on the right-hand side. So you can go ahead and peruse all of those and look at them as you would like. And then this is just a screenshot of where the restoration data archive is. All these links are on the Habitat Report Card 2 page that you have, and also on the website. That's where you can download the clean version of our annual reporting data. And then this is a screenshot of the new data entry portal. It is live right now. You can use the QR code and test it out. We'd love your feedback. I'm going to leave it open for kind of testing and feedback until the end of the year, and then we'll make it live in January. So instead of compiling all your projects from May through July for the entire fiscal year, if you complete a project, you can enter it at the time. That way, you know, it's not as much of a burden on you all. I'll still send out reminder emails, don't worry. But this will make it easier on you guys, and it'll make it easier on us. There's also going to be options for you to upload a shapefile if you would like of the project area, which normally we've just been getting, you know, lat long, so that would be useful for us. And then here's a screenshot of the Habitat report card that's located up here. Again, we want your feedback. A lot of the things that I talked about in the presentation are on this report card. Is this useful for you? What maybe, you know, we don't need to put on there? What more can we put on there? Marcus, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so everything that Carrie just said is on the report card. So nice little summary there. If you're familiar with the ESR program, you know we do a lot of report cards. This is another one to throw in the mix, but nonetheless, we think they're really important tools that can help you understand status and trends of all the indicators you can track. And so this obviously being the focus for habitat restoration. The way it's kind of broken up is the two sides. The first side is really just an assessment of restoration projects over time, both the current year and projects to date. So we do plan on creating this every year. So next year will be 2024 project summary, and then everything prior to that. And this is just to kind of show you guys how much work we've done, as well as where the effort has been focused, both in space and by different project types. The second side is really geared towards Habitat Master Plan style metrics. In theory, all of the work you're doing on the first side should translate to changes on the right side. That's the general idea, but most of the reporting products on the right side are speaking to specific metrics for native habitats in the subtidal, intertidal, supertidal strata of the watershed. So we see a table on the left that has our short-term targets and long-term goals and whether they've been met in any given year for the current data set. And then the right side is that report card that kind of shows the targets and goals, but also the trajectory of the changes over time to kind of see what's changing, where should we kind of prioritize our efforts. And so that's why we have on the bottom left there that prioritization component that is meant to just really hammer home like this is what we should focus our efforts on for the next year. And we do this is draft. So we would sincerely love your feedback on this. It's very likely a finalized version will be done early next year. That will be on our tech report library. But please give us feedback. We really want to know if this is useful for you guys, not just like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, does this help you do your job? Does this help distill information for you with how much work you're doing and where the priorities are, how this translates to the Habitat Master Plan, and how we're all working together to achieve the targets and goals for that. So feel free to write on there with a pen, think you like, you don't like. Actually, I encourage all of you to do that because we want that feedback and we can go and improve on this. So yes, that's the goal. We want this to be useful for you, and it's not going to be useful if you don't know that it's useful. So that's it.
So just to repeat for those online, if you didn't hear some of what Marcus was saying, we really do want your feedback on this report card. So, you can find it online. You can send us an email. And those of you in the room, definitely mark it up. Let us know what you think. Okay?
Are there any initial impressions from anybody?
Or
Now that
questions.
the floor is open.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's a good resource for when we're asked to do presentations about, some of the work we're doing, what the challenges we're facing. It's a very good visual description of the challenges we have in this watershed. I'd say it's very busy, it's very packed, but, and this probably isn't necessarily something that should go on a habitat report card, but like a legislative update, there are things that are changing at a legislative level that influences our ability to have improvements or greater challenges. Again, I don't think it deserves to be on the report card, but in some way mention legislation that we may either be able to give them time or be aware of that influences our day-to-day in trying to make real improvements.
Yeah. I do realize it's a little busy. But
Yeah.
report cards tend to be.
Yeah, it's great.
But I guess from that perspective, if you see this and your immediate reaction is, oh God, this is just a mess of information, I don't know how to get through. That's information you need to know.
Right. So the idea was to have, kind of one focal point on each slide. So if you look in the center of the first one, it's, this is how many projects were done in 2023, how many acreage, this and that. So that would be one of the main messages. And then on the second side would be the priorities for the upcoming year. So, maybe we can move that around so that, your eyeball goes to it first or, something of that nature. But we tried to put one kind of summary thing that people can kind of gravitate towards. And then if you want more information, you can dive into the tables and go to all the different web links. Yeah.
I would say, I'm assuming maybe this is the front page, right? The first page, a lot less overwhelming. I don't know if it's just me. I find this alarming. I look at it, it's the colors, I just get this instant anxiety reaction to it, and
That's the
I
point,
honestly
though.
can't even get past the color coding to process the information. I don't know if it would be as easy as this one, if you just kind of color coded your target categories to be a green or a red. Either we've met the target so far or we haven't. I'm not sure, at least for me, I don't know that I need to know whether or not we're trending in that direction. Because when I go to apply for T-birth, I'm simply going to look at, has that goal for that habitat been met? No, it hasn't. I'm going to say, hey, my project would help meet this goal that you still need. I don't know, for me, I'm going to say, well, you kind of got this gold color coding and we're not going in such a great direction, so my project could help. I think it's more of a, either we're there yet or we're not there yet. That's how I would see it.
Yeah, and there's another level to that too. So, that report card side of it is just looking at the 2030 targets. And we also need to keep in mind those 2050 goals. So if we're not trending towards the 2030 targets, we're definitely not going to meet those 2050 goals. So I see your point, but, long-term strategy, we also need to kind of track that as well.
I think, I agree with what you're saying with the color coding. To your point about obviously your first cut. But I think the part that I do actually like about the trending component is that there does need to be some reference to what's happening around the bay to address these. If you just showing that, these 5 goals are not met, and you start putting efforts, we're not in a vacuum, and luckily we have great forums like this to communicate, but I guess to me, it gives a scenario of, okay, this isn't being met, but we know we've got 10 projects in the hopper that are working towards this. Maybe we can adjust effort elsewhere, or maybe 10 is not enough and we need 20 projects. So that trending analysis, I think, does add something. Now, whether or not that's captured appropriately in the color coding, like you said, that needs some work. But I think there is value in looking at the trends, at least in some component. I don't know, that's the worst part about the best and worst part about our report card is trying to fit so much information in there, but not being so overwhelming. So that's definitely tough. But I think you guys did a great job.
Keep in mind too, these targets and goals that were in the Habitat Master Plan were partly informed by past trends. Land use change, as well as trajectory of restoration projects by type in the historical record. So that means that I think having that trend analysis does kind of tie that way into the motivation for why we've set the target goals the way they are. But also, we did this report card early last year. If you all remember, it was kind of a prototype version, and we did tweak it some a little bit to make it a little more, I don't know, easy to interpret, but we're still open to ideas on how to improve that. If we hate the color scheme, it was a unanimous agreement that it sucks, we can change it. Or any other ideas you might have about improving it. It's a proof of concept, so we're open to changes on it.
Absolutely.
I have a question, but I'll also throw my support on having the trends in there. I think with a lot of habitat change, it'll be good until it's not. And when it's not, it's very hard to make it good again. I think we've seen that with seagrass and some other habitats too. The other question about the upland, so the trend is down there. Is that how much of that is driven by clearing in the watershed, and how much do we anticipate that trend to be driven by sea level rise, taking out some of those coastal tracts? It's done into that yet, or
The uplands trend, I would say, which conflict?
The last
Very
one.
Yeah, that's driven entirely by just development of the watershed. If you look at the land change analysis, the amount of uplands we had in 1990 present, like a quarter or a third of that has been lost to development, and that trend has been consistent over the last 30 years. So I'd say that's probably the blame. So acquisition of upland habitats, even though the projects over time shows that the majority of effort is to focus on uplands, I do think a majority of effort is enhancement style projects like maintenance, control burdens or equipment invasives, not necessarily like required protecting upland habitats. So there's kind of a bias in the amount of projects we see in uplands versus trends, which is kind of disconnect, but relates to the types of activities.
Which we can actually break that down if needed, based on the reporting too. This is just kind of like a good snapshot of what we get.
I would maybe suggest that that trend there is perhaps understating the issues with uplands, because sea level rise is going to accelerate. We're doing a trend based pretty much just on land clearing, and maybe some sea level rise, but that's ramping up, and some of those big coastal tracts again chipped away at. And they'll be picked up maybe as other habitats, but maybe not.
Yeah, we do have coastal uplands separated from non-coastal uplands, so theoretically we should see that there first, but I see your point.
Maybe this is the thought you've already got incorporated, and maybe it's part of your future part of this presentation, I'm not too sure, but early in the presentation, you had the land use map, some of the restoration, acquisition goals, and current conservation land holdings. Can you then take the stressed community types and then portray that into what properties exist today that may have potential of projects to address these types of habitats? So kind of cues you in on, we have a problem here. These are the conservation lands that have potential to improve or are targets for restoration.
Can you quote the restoration?
Yeah.
We have I think if you're asking that question, we have a map that's kind of similar where, this is our like opportunities area, but it doesn't tell you the potential. So we have an additional map that you can get to on our website that shows of these lands that are restorable, that aren't currently native habitats.
Right.
What is a likely land category that it is native that it could be restored to?
Right, so
And
if
that's-
you cue in on salt marshes, here's the properties that have the greatest potential.
Yeah, I don't think it says specific to salt marshes. I think it might. I don't even know the title.
Or whichever community type.
It's like uplands, wetlands.
Intertidal.
Yeah,
It's
estuarine,
based
yeah.
on, whether or not it's restorable. So is it like altered by moderate like land use, like a fallow farm field, like that can be restorable if it's required. And it's based on the soils, like are they hydric soils or not, so wetland versus upland, and whether or not it's near the coast or up in the watershed, that would be intertidal upland or freshwater.
Right.
So we have a map that shows that. If you go, there's a link on the back of the page. The first one goes to our website. That, yeah, we can get to that.
Yeah,
Eric, can you pull that up?
I can.
I mean,
Yeah, the very top one.
to go a step further, that may help you create a prioritization system for future acquisitions, which ones have the greatest potential to address some of the stressors we're seeing in the watershed.
Jerry and Marcus, I'll weigh in a bit. So again, I've worked with Noah, and I think we're an advisory agency in the federal permitting arena. And just when I look at this, I think it's very useful because it helps provide our agency what I feel is scientifically defensible information, where we could say, look, there's been a loss of these types of habitats throughout the estuary program, and we think these more additional conservation measures or protections. I think it's certainly good. And I'm thinking about it, so the end product for this is maybe the general public that would go to the estuary program website, right?
It's you all.
Right.
But also, I mean,
So to that point, I mean, we're all like-minded, science-oriented folks here in the room. I like the red, green, and yellow approach when the public may go to the estuary program website, because they, at least I would think they can make a connection between stoplights, right? So to me, having that kind of yellow interface is good, because in my opinion, it does suggest trends that are occurring, whether they're successful or not, or you can reasonably assume that they could be achieved, I think is important. And I think they should continue to be included rather than just kind of a pass fail. The analogy I have with that is like in your car, you have an analog temperature gauge that, oh wait, the temperature's starting to creep up, it's past, it's past where it should be, or is it suddenly red or dark? By the time the light's on, it's kind of too late. But as it's creeping up, maybe you know enough to slow down or, add water to the overflow tank or that kind of thing. So, anyway, I think the three-color approach is good.
I thought you were gonna say that the light's not quite red when you ran through, it was like orange. Started when it was yellow, and then by the time.
No, I
different scenario, our scenario.
I'm one of the people that, I'm that guy that breaks for the yellow.
That's good.
And the fact that I don't have whiplash in this case.
I'll go and take one more comment here, and then we'll move on to our next speaker. This is a great discussion, and I hope it continues. But
I think one piece of missing data is where the losses are occurring for seagrass, salt marsh. But those might be the easiest systems to restore. So if there was an exhibit map that showed from the every 2-year mapping that you're doing, where those locations are, that might be some of the easiest areas to restore.
so an additional map maybe on the habitat report card side, looking at land use. Yeah. I think there was one comment online. We've got one from Kirsty Martin. I agree, emphasizing priorities over the result table, data tables is important way to simplify the progress, give more space to priorities. Okay. Thank you everyone for all your input. And please mark up those report cards based on your thoughts. Our next speaker that I'd like to welcome today is Randall Parkinson. He comes from FIU. He's going to be talking about a living shoreline tool that he developed that he hopes can help some of our living shoreline restoration in Tampa Bay. Please get food, grab the habitat report card, which is up there on there, and sign in. And basis proceedings, exactly. Okay.
I just realized I don't even know how to use the computer anymore without a mouse.
There's a mouse. Okay, so basically we'll just put this on there, and you should be good to go.
Yeah, and then if I want to exit this, I'm just going to hit escape and then find my.
So sharing the entire screen. So.
Right, but if I'm on, I hit that link, and then in order for me to go back between the link and here,
Yeah, you just go down to the Chrome tab there.
the Chrome tab is where and then this is, oh, I got it. Okay.
You should be able to link directly from the presentation.
But I mean to get back to the PowerPoint.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you for allowing me to participate. My name is Randy Parkinson. I moved to Florida from Iowa in 1982 to start a PhD program down at the University of Miami and never left. I've been living in Melbourne, Florida since 1987 and I'm a coastal geologist, and I spent my entire professional life working on the implications of sea level rise and urbanization on the natural environment. I think we may have, in 1996, I think it was, Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge was getting ready for its 100th anniversary, and there was a third of the island, the reserve is larger, for which its namesake from Theodore Roosevelt and or Teddy Roosevelt, and they only had a third left, and they were concerned about having this big 100-year celebration, and there would be no island or the rookery itself. So went out there, GIS and GPS were just coming out, mapped, did historical work, figured out the causes of the island loss, and proposed putting in a breakwater made of natural coquina rock, and then backfilling and planting with native vegetation, which was done. And the project is considered to be a success. So I've been tracking living shorelines for a long time. And, the emphasis in that is blown up. It's a really, really good means of public education and outreach, citizen science, very, very important. But there are some challenges, as we know, with site selection just today. Where do these go? What are the bases by which we decide what they go? How do we build them? And that's just for today. But then the challenge, as mentioned here a couple of times, is the sea level is rising. And is that shoreline installation going to be resilient? Is it going to last long enough to actually mature and perform the ecosystem services that we all hope that they will do? And since most of them are 5 years old or whatever, I just did an analysis for the state of Florida. Um, Sea level's rising at a centimeter a year right now. When I started grad school, we talked about 2 millimeters, which means in 2050, that's a foot of rise relative to the year 2000. And there's a lot of aspirational goals in terms of installing these out to 2050 with milestones and all that, and we want them to last. So anyway, I proposed and got funded by the EPA to develop a geospatial tool, as you can see on this slide, that was designed, what does it say? Novel geospatial living shoreline site suitability decision support tool that incorporates future conditions based upon locally derived sea level rise scenarios. And this was funded, and we're winding down in this 2-year project. The project focused on the Indian River Lagoon NEP program. And the tool, which I'll show you here, it has a lot of other applications besides living shorelines, such as, in terms of existing intertidal and supertidal habitats, this submergence model, which is parcel specific and related to sea level data from this basin, you can see where submergence will occur and what is likely to occur as it goes under. What upland areas are going to become intertidal, what intertidal areas are likely to go subtidal, and put that into your design framework for long-term management. So I have a bunch of co-authors on here, but I came here today because the tool is basically done. We're building a website landing page. There's going to be information on there. There's going to be all the metadata and whatnot. There'll be a video tutorial. So now that it's ready, we're going out and informing folks like yourself about this tool and its potential, and in order to perhaps engage in collaborations, and seek funding and development specific for this watershed. And we're talking to others as well. We built this thing from the start to be like, I played with Legos when I was a kid, but they weren't quite, there was like 2 colors, but like that, where you could put things in and take them out depending on where you're working. Like this watershed, we'd have different parcel-specific information, different sea level stuff, but the framework for it is there so that it can be done with relative ease. So what I wanted to do then is, I wanted to show this. Not a lot of room over here. So this is from the Fish and Wildlife Commission's website on living shorelines. And when you look at it, you can, this I think is up at I know this is up at the Panhandle. Here you can see an installation with oysters and then the native vegetation. And this is a very low gradient slope here from the Panhandle, which I have. Down here in Tampa Bay, here's an example of the Huey Springs. And you can see the breakwater, wave break. You can see the plantings. And of course, this is in front of a seawall, a bulkhead. When I was in Galveston for the living shoreline technology transfer, we went out and looked at a lot of installations, and they were all in front of bulkheads. And this is what gets me thinking, is as sea level rises, the only way that these can be resilient is if they can keep pace with the rate of sea level rise. And that happens to be an area of my expertise, and to know that at 10 millimeters a year, it is highly unlikely. That said, this may not have been built to be resilient in 2050. It may have been built because the seawall was degrading. They were thinking about rebuilding it, but they want to try living shorelines. So that it wasn't really designed to last, put there just to be resilient and make up for or mitigate for loss over the next 30 or 40 years. So a lot of different reasons why you might install them, and not all of them may be for long-term mitigation for habitat loss and ecosystem function. Here on the lower right is another one off of Fernandina Beach. Here again, you can see the installation in front of a bulkhead. And then at the very top here, New Smyrna, where it's built out in front of a low-lying, low-relief area. So you can imagine as sea level rises, these will respond differently. So what we wanted to do was say, well, let's just, where will they respond differently or favorably and not? Before I do that, I mentioned the bird rookeries that I started. This is an example. Here's the base map. This is in Melbourne. This is a rookery. It's actually a spoil island, and there's several threatened and endangered species that utilize it. I did some analysis, but you can see here I think this was DEP tried to slow the loss of the habitat or rookery through the installation of these large oyster bags, and it hasn't worked. So the shorelines are being attempt to put on shorelines of the mainland, if you will, but also spoil islands and islands themselves, which present distinct challenges as well in there. So these are some clips of the suitability conceptual models, decision frameworks, and other geospatial tools that are used. I know Tampa Bay has the VIMS one, and it's just like these here. If you look at them, they only look, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but they are looking at existing site conditions. All existing suitability tools do that. And this just isn't, the idea that this whole concept is maturing. We're getting smarter. We're asking new questions. This is a logical progression of our progress on how we think about resilience of our coastlines and our habitats and our attempts to mitigate. So here they look at ecological, hydrodynamic, geophysical. Over on the upper right, here's another one for Chesapeake Bay. The input, these are all things that are observed at the time. And then they go into a decision framework and they spit out what is likely reasonable selection for that particular shoreline segment. And then two more. Here's one from East Florida. Again, existing shoreline type. This is wave energy, and then a generic comes out with what you might want to consider. And the same for this one in Santa Rosa County with the same idea here. So this was our point is that, and in fact, what you'll see is that our tool incorporates existing shoreline characteristics into it. So we just take that and add more. Think a little bit about sea level. Sea level rising is a lot more than you think. I mean, when we did this analysis for the state of Florida, 14 tide gauges, the acceleration over the duration of the record, long-term records, which went back to about 1913, 1920, blew up in the mid-90s. Substantial acceleration in the rate of sea level rise with no end in sight. This is what we used for our projections. So these are the NOAA scenario-based sea level rise trajectories from the Trident Pier there in Port Canaveral, which was within, and our point being, within the study domain. So we would use a different one for Tampa Bay, right? And so they've done that. NOAA looked at the behavior of sea level over the long-term records and then modeled, that's why it's scenario-based, on where these trajectories, how they will behave between now and 2100 based on various CO2 emissions scenarios from 1.5 to 8.5. So those are your low, intermediate, high, and high. So those are the NOAA scenarios. And these are the elevations relative to the year 2000. Sea level over there will be 6.8 feet above 2000 in the year 2100, almost 7 feet of rise. Down to the low end here of about 3 feet. And we all know looking up 2100 is a little difficult to do. So we think about it in the year 2050. So even if you look at that, with the Trident submarine base there in Port Canaveral, by 2050, the high is 1.47, and the intermediate high is 1.25. And actually, if you look at where sea level is tracking now, just taking the rate of rise over since 2000, from 2003 to 2022, we calculated the rate of rise, and we just extrapolated that linearly to the year 2050, and we got 1.32. So that number is between the highest estimate that NOAA has currently and the intermediate high. So we realized that all these ranges and stuff that you have the opportunity to look at, we've all missed all of those. And we're currently tracking right between the high and the intermediate high, and we're still accelerating. So I'll give you two examples of how this works. One down here in Brevard County. This is an existing living shoreline installation that was put in by the Brevard Zoo. Is a very active NGO down there. It does a lot of that work because of their pool of volunteers, honestly, the ability. And then we're going to show you one up here in Volusia County, which is a proposed restoration site. So I'm going to hopefully copy that, which I can't seem to do. Let's see. Well, first I'll get into it, because that's how I roll. Okay, so let's see here. Let me find that. Getting a little challenged here. I guess I'll just have to wing it. So basically, this is the tool side of the landing page. I'm just showing you. So if you clicked on I want to use the tool, you would end up on this page. And then when you accept the user agreement, it looks like this. So this is the Indian River Lagoon NEP watershed boundaries right here, Orlando, right? I was talking about Port Canaveral. That's right in here where that tide gauge is, dead center of the study area. And so what you have is, on the left side is the base map, which you can zoom in and zoom out as I'll show you here. And then there's an inset map on the left here, so you can kind of keep track of where you are, when you're in the weeds. And there's a drop-down menu here. These are the layers that I'll show you. Parcel data, parcel-specific data we got from all of our county partners. Transects, elevation transects that are what make this tool different than all others. Well, aside from the fact that it's also parcel specific, as opposed to a lot of the other visualization tools, which are more general. We have a demographic index that we use here to inform you if that's an important consideration in a go, no-go, or how you're trying to get funding. We have the digital elevation model that drives all the elevation that we got from the Division of Emergency Management. It's the 2018, their most recent, with a vertical resolution of sub-centimeter. And then we have the shoreline characteristics that I mentioned previously. And then on the right side is the decision on what NOAA sea level scenario you want, from intermediate low to intermediate high. I'm just going to use the high from now on after I did all that analysis, sadly. I mean, it's actually, when you see what this is here, it is pretty mind-boggling. And then you could pick when, your time steps, 2030, 2050, or whatever. You could pick that on here and see what it looks like. And then here's where all that gets visualized. So the search thing, you could put in a parcel ID, you could put in the coordinates, you could put in an address, and it'll zoom you right into that. Unfortunately, I can't figure out how to cut and paste that, so I'll have to do it a different way, but you just plug that in and search, it goes right to that location for you. You can start with that. Over here, I'm going to just put on the SAT and go to the location that I want to do. Sort of running out of real estate here. Pardon?
Go to this. Go right there. All right, she went ahead and put the link in there for you. I think that'll do it.
think I have that.
Okay.
Isn't that what I'm?
All right, you're fine.
Okay. So, all right, I'm just going to zoom in. So the box is so small. Of course, you can't see it, so it doesn't make this very helpful, but let's just pretend it is. We're right in here. This is the causeway. This is the Indian River Lagoon. To the right is the Atlantic Ocean. And you can see here, there are the oyster bags that were placed here along the segment of the coastline. The green is a shoreline that abuts a public property, and red is abuts private property. These are important considerations when you're trying to shop around and figure out where you want to maybe put something in. Clearly, in a lot of cases, you're looking for publicly owned land, but in some cases is an interest by private owners, or you may have an interest. And the nice thing is I'll show you, you can figure out who that is by one click. So here, here's the parcel data. So I clicked on that, and this is parcel data that we got from each of our counties. Green now indicates that's the parcel boundaries for the public property, and red is the boundary for the private. So click on that. Just do something here. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I don't know why this is how it works, but I should. I click on that. Okay. So here, that is the parcel polygon for that location. So now, if I click on the transects, and I click on one of these, you can see here under the transect, that is the transect, the elevation of a transect that starts along the shoreline, and then as I move the cursor along it, you can see where you are on that, right? So here is that transect. And the transect, as I said, is from the DEM data. So it is actually hung on, it is NAVD 88. Everything on here, because elevations are important in a lot of ways, so everything is dialed into NAVD 88. We do have a link to the tidal datums if you want to do the offsets to get to mean sea level or mean high water or whatever. But here's the transect. And here you could download the data, so you could generate your own transect, format it the way you want, put it into your proposal or whatever. You can do that as a KML or a CSV, and you can also just capture the picture of it if you wanted to use that in here. So we really wanted to make this to be something that was easily usable and practical to the practitioners that are considering coastal resilience and living shorelines. This elevation right here, the blue line, that is the mean high water line as calculated by NOAA for this location using the VDATUM software that they have in there. So because the surface of our water bodies are not flat on average, they're different, right? There's relief to it. So this is extremely tight, not generalized. It's parcel specific. Now down here is the slope. The slope is calculated between two adjacent points at the midpoint. We did this because we're talking about resilience, and based on my professional experience, the resilience is low slope, right? If the slope is vertical, you have a seawall, as I pointed out earlier, and sea level rises, it only has one way to go, which is up, and the probability of it keeping pace at a centimeter a year is 0. As that lays back, and sea level rises, they can migrate into that accommodation space. And the slope, obviously, the lower it is, the more easily and quickly it'll migrate into that accommodation space there. And I set that value at 5 degrees, lower even better. And then you can see that on the histogram over here. So at the very beginning, that installation, which you can see there, is adjacent to a slope that's about 12 or 13 degrees, so steep. And in fact, if you look at the shoreline characteristics that we got from UCF, could have been VIMS, whatever. All along here is riprap. And if I just go down to the bottom here, I can reduce the opacity. And you can see that riprap on here. So it's all in here. So you know it's going to be at 45 degrees for sure, something like it. And the density of our pixels on elevation is like 50, every about 9 feet. So we don't see 90 ever because it doesn't sample at that resolution. Okay, so and then if I put the parcel back on here, you go over here, it tells you information about the parcel ID number, who owns it, or the classification, type of land, acres, landowner. That's all in here. And then you can, if you wanted to, you could do the demographics. This is, I think it's, so these are census block groups, but so you have to kind of zoom out a little bit, but you can see areas. If you were looking to find an area, you could zoom into this. This red is 100% people of color and low income, for example. And if you went down here and you said, this is an area we'd like to maybe try to develop a shoreline, and then look at your parcels, you could say, well, here's one right here that's publicly owned. We might be able to put something in there. In fact, they already have. All right, one other example of how am I doing on time? Okay. So another example of this came about in terms of other applications of this tool besides just living shorelines. So now you can see here, this is sort of working, the index. Let's see if I can find this. Yeah. So I believe this is it. Yeah, so in Volusia County, there is the Marine Science Center up there that they have restored this area. This is a huge area of fill, as you can see here, and they reduced the grade here to put in some wetlands. This is a demonstration. This is a learning center. But they're interested in restoring this segment, which is an old parking lot here. And so if you just put a transect on there, there's the elevation transect along there. So what I did was I said, let's see here. So here's one of the transects right there. All right, and that's the data I just exported. And then here is the mean high water line. And then the slope, there's several segments of the slope that are in excess of 5 degrees. So if you're going to restore that area, you want to get it below 5 if you can. Here are the various elevations that sea level will be in the various years. So I just said, well, what if they wanted to restore this to be functional to year 2100? How might you be able to use this tool? So there is a slope from the present shoreline to the edge of that spoil, they're at what, about 400 feet in. And the use of feet and all that, our partners wanted it in feet, not meters. So we had a lot of input from our partners that, we've been hearing today, how important that is to make sure that it's configured in a way that they'll use. But anyway, if you then think about it, you can look at that and you go, all right, there's where we want to go. We don't have to buy any fill. We can excavate on one part of it, fill on the other, and if the volumes aren't correct, all the way. We can adjust that slope as long as we're keeping it low on there. And then we don't have to take anything off. We don't have to bring anything in. It reduces the project costs, and it makes it something that may be more likely done than not. So that's where we are right now. There's so many other applications and implications of rising sea level. One thing is as sea level is rising, so is mean high water. And all your permitting is probably linked to mean high water with where you measure distances or how you measure elevations. And does the DEP even update that every once in a while? And if you have a project that's going for 30 years and it's a foot of rise and you got something that's linked to mean high water, well, it won't be in 2050. Does it matter? I don't know. It would depend. But as I said, we are just about done with this. All of our partners will have access to the tool for next year. We paid for the server time on that for them. And as I said, out right now, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to come over here and talk to you all here. As I said, I've been involved in the Indian River Lagoon and with meetings like this. It's very, very important. A lot of expertise that goes into a successful program or project, and I'm honored to be able to come here and speak with you all. And I hope down the road that we can garner some interest, because I was here this morning and we chatted and are considering submitting a proposal to do it for Tampa Bay under the next solicitation that'll come out in January. And at that time, would be looking for partners to sign on to the project, and if it was funded, to then participate with us to help develop it and meet all the needs of the greater Tampa Bay estuary. So thank you very much. And I guess I can take questions or.
Yes, I've got a quick one. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know, just wondering, what did that cost for the dude and what you just showed for IRL?
Our request to the EPA was about $275,000 for 2 years. They required a match, which was in kind, and then we had some match in there. So the total project cost was over $300,000. I don't have that number, but a lot of that effort was just to develop the tool itself. Again, it would depend on the availability of the data we needed, but just so that's sort of what that was and what we did. Very different than what we do now, that we have a lot of that under our belt.
Just a question, comment. When you brought up that second slide with Ulay Springs, which is over here on the Hillsborough River, right in Tampa, you made the point that that particular project, there's not going to be a whole lot of transitional opportunity, especially for mangroves, because it's a vertical seawall. Have you or others maybe in the field of living shorelines considered maybe, I know it's going to look terrible, but if you put in a slope, like you had alluded to on these other projects, of riprap material, so that with your projected rate of rise, those mangroves can basically serve almost act like a stepladder, if you will.
Well, that's exactly the kind of discussion we want to be having right now and haven't been having up till now.
Yeah.
Right. So that is exactly what we're hoping the discussions will be, and because right now, there's a lot of areas where they go in and they survey it, and then they get all their elevations right for whatever kind of plant vegetation they're wanting, but for today. Right. And as I said, it may be in that location that the considerations were not about. I mean, we're starting now. Now we know. We weren't thinking about this nearly so 10 years ago when this really got off the ground. Fair enough. But now, and again, in some places it may not be relevant, but in others it could be. It just depends on why you're doing that installation.
Yeah. One final comment, if I could. So I work with NOAA. I unfortunately work in the regulatory kind of arena, if you will. And one thing, even though we advocate for living shorelines, right, our agency does, generally speaking, is we do want to discourage the transition, especially construction of living shorelines in areas of seagrass habitat. Because seagrass habitat is obviously ecologically and economically important everywhere. But just certainly that's a design consideration. I know the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has an online mapping tool for seagrasses. Maybe at some point, if you're able to integrate some of that data layer, that might be useful too.
So that's what we're going to go back to EPA for a round 2 for the IRL. And we're going to get NOAA Flu LiDAR and has bathymetry. We also have seagrass maps. And we also have muck maps. All that would be added. And the idea would be that I don't know what the vertical resolution of LiDAR is over water. I'm assuming it would be different than over land, but I don't know because it's sub-centimeter. The idea would be that because the bottleneck in Brevard County, which has a goal of 20 miles in 10 years, 2 miles of living shoreline a year, they're bottled up with the permit requirements that require a survey, an elevation survey, which RTK, that's a couple $1,000. Our goal here is to link the upland topography LiDAR with the subtidal bathymetry LiDAR, create a line that has a resolution that's sub-centimeter, and you could take that transect, and that would meet the permit requirements for your survey, and that bottleneck would be eliminated. Seagrass is obviously an extremely important issue, and so our partner said we want that. We're going to try to get money to put that in here, but that can be done.
I'm going to say that last slide you showed with that one, your slope, how you develop that slope, that, the issue with the slope always is that represents a loss of land. But the way that you had that graph, it can at least be utilized, in my mind, to start that conversation of here's where your shoreline is at 2030, here's where your shoreline is at 2050. The goal is to have this, as you develop that for that parcel, for that specific spoil area. The other one where you showed the slope.
Let's see. Well, so I just wanted to, I wanted to show you one other thing here. So this is what you were talking about?
Yeah. If you go to your next one, right there, go back one. It kind of shows you can at least have the conversation now of where your shoreline currently is, as far as because you've got a spatial aspect of distance from basically your seawall to the inlet area. So you can visualize where your shoreline is. Distance from shoreline represents the new location of shoreline along time.
Yes.
As a support, you essentially recognize the element that developing that slope does lose parcel area. For a private entity, that's extremely expensive, but you could, in my mind, you could use that in a supportive discussion.
Right, about the scale of the
habitat that will support. And to Mark's point, if you do have mangroves and you allow that area to migrate upslope, theoretically, if you had seagrass there, it would also have that opportunity to go upslope as well, and follow that, rather than the existing vertical.
Right, we're gonna need something like that because the sweet zone on seagrass, I know that's been mapped throughout the IRL. It's a meter or less. If you raise sea level, a lot of that's going to go underneath that depth at which they get the appropriate amount of light. Let me just show you one other thing, if that's okay.
Let's go ahead and move on.
Okay.
We can continue this conversation. We'll get to the next couple folks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Oh, I don't know.
I got it. All right, our next speaker is Jessica. She's going to be talking about funding opportunities.
Now you can talk about money to do all these good things.
Hold on, I think we're closed out of a couple of windows here, so just let me get them back up.
to talk about mostly TVEP funding. I am the community projects manager at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, and I manage the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund, and I'm starting to manage the Bay mini grants. So I'll give you a little more details on those. Thank you. Lucky for you, I'm going to skip through a lot of stuff. These are our program priorities. If you haven't seen those before, I just wanted to show it to you. Any of the funding that you apply for through the estuary program has to relate to one of these priorities, or in the CCP, the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan for Tampa Bay. But that's pretty easy because there's a lot of stuff in there. I'm just showing you some screenshots here. If and when you get to the point of applying, I'll give you more detail. You don't really need to know this stuff right now. So these are our main funding mechanisms. The EPA work plan is a good majority of our funding, or at least a large portion of it, and we decide how to use that each year for the next 5 years. So every year we have a new work plan that we put together. Every year we have new needs for communications, outreach, educational projects, and then technical projects as well, whether research, restoration, whatever it is. So each and every year these things come around. You should keep that in mind as you have new projects that come to mind, or new needs for funding. We also co-manage the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund with another organization, Restore America's Estuaries. We also have the Bay Mini Grant Program, which is funded through sales of the tarpon tag specialty license plate. And then last but not least, we have all these random things at the bottom too. So you can kind of think of TVEP as like a really helpful middleman for funding sometimes. We are pretty successful at getting larger federal grants because of our relationship with EPA and our status as a national estuary program. And then we take that funding and disperse it for projects throughout the watershed. So we already went through most of these. Let's see how much. Yeah, I'll give you a little bit more info. EPA work plan, I already told you it's for all kinds of projects, whether outreach, technical, etc. Projects range roughly 10,000 to 300,000, but that is a super rough number. They're kind of all over the place. Basically, you should come to us with ideas and we'll figure out what to do with it. The Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund comes around each and every year. The request for proposals for this program will open January 17th, so just a little over a month away, and then it will close in March, on March 13th. So you've only got a couple of months to finalize your application, your proposal, and put that together. If you do have an idea and you do think you're going to apply for TPER funding, hit me up as soon as possible. I would love to review what you have put together and provide you some feedback. I don't actually select the project, so I can help you make your proposal even stronger. So that's kind of nice for you. And the projects, we have about 700,000 available each year, but really per project that looks like roughly 25,000 to 250,000 per project. But it spans the range. We would welcome proposals up to our available funding too. The mini grant is funded by the tarpon tag. It's every year. It's another competitive grant program. And I should have mentioned both of these are for water quality, habitat restoration. TBERF also funds applied research and behavior change campaigns. And then the mini grant will fund any sort of outreach education component project, participatory science. These are, we've historically done them up to about $5,000 per project, but we're considering doing more than that, so keep that in mind. That also comes around every year. That'll be next summer, so keep an eye out for that. These are obviously much smaller projects. If you work for maybe a nonprofit or association of some sort, or of those organizations that might have a good idea for a smaller scale project, send them our way. And then last but not least, we have all these additional grants. They kind of are opportunistic. Sometimes they come out of nowhere, bipartisan infrastructure law, and they support specific high priority work that comes around, and the funding amount is just whatever it is when that happens. These are some examples of requests for proposals that we have either coming out or are out. This slide is a little outdated, I believe. The Restore, is that one done? Is that RFP done? I don't know. Anyway, so I'm not the project manager for Restore, but we do have an RFP either open for that or coming open for that. The EPA work plan, we've already gotten ours set for next year, but again, just tell us about your projects. You don't need to know our timelines. We'll figure out where it fits in and when you should be applying for it. And then the reasonable assurance plan update, that RFP is going to come out in summer of 2024. A few others, TBRF I just mentioned, comes out in January. We already talked about that one. Bipartisan infrastructure law, I believe we're not soliciting proposals for that anymore. Mini grants will come open next summer again, and I believe this last one is finished as well. And these are just examples of other organizations, either locally or throughout the state, that have similar RFPs. Just wanted to throw them out there too. But I'm not going to harp on them. If you want this information, you can reach out to me. But the thing I really want you to take away from this is just tell us about your project idea. If it's just an inkling that you had and you're like, maybe this could be a thing, all the way up to, I have this entire project plan created and I'm looking for X number of dollars for it. Do you have money to give me? You just have to let us know about your project. If we don't know about it, we can't fund it. So you can submit a project idea anytime on our website by going to this link, or you can literally just call us or email us and just hit us up and let us know what's on your mind. That's all I have for you. Any quick questions about, yes?
So are you working at all with the state of Florida sustainability group? They have money.
Which sustainability
Florida
group?
Sustainability. Remember that?
I don't know is the answer, but we've received DEP money, SwiftMud, all kinds of stuff at the state level, so I'm not sure about that specific one. Any questions? Who's going to submit a TBRF application? All right, hit me up before February, because if you, yeah, send it like 2 days before it's due, right? And be like, can you look at this and give me feedback? And that's all I have for you. So, cool. Thanks, y'all.
All right, our next presentation is from Chris Kaufman from NOAA. She's actually going to be presenting online. So we're going to try this out. I'm going to bring up your presentation, Chris, if you can unmic yourself and test out your microphone.
Can you hear me, Carrie?
Gotcha. All right. I will go ahead and stay up here and go forward with slides for you.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everybody, it's Chris Kaufman. I'm from NOAA's Restoration Center and the office is here in St. Pete, Florida. I wanted to share with you a couple of our opportunities through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Next slide, please. So under BIL, the Office of Habitat Conservation, the Restoration Center's main office, we received from Congress $891 million over the 5-year BIL funding. That money was allocated to us in two very specific, somewhat specific provisions. So $491 million of that is to be put towards habitat restoration projects. And then the other $400 million is to support fish passage of migratory fish. And throughout the funding allocations, we also have specific guidelines for supporting federally recognized tribes in their restoration efforts. Once we were awarded these funding and we started our competitions for round one, we were actually given an additional $484 million of the Inflation Reduction Act funding to put towards our restoration competitions. So we have completed round one of our competitions and have awarded those and are actively working on those restoration projects. We are currently doing round two competitions. 3 of the 4 are closed, and I'll describe those in a second. But I'm happy to report that we will be doing at least one more round of all 4 competitions, and that should be expected in the near-ish future. So next slide, please. Just to share with you the awards from our year one, our round one competitions. For all 4 competitions, we awarded 109 projects worth $480 million. Examples that you may recognize is $14.9 million to Sarasota County for their Alligator Creek Stream Restoration Project. We also funded Perdido and Pensacola Bay Estuary Program, close to $11 million for oyster restoration and living shoreline restoration. Another project that we funded is examples from Jacksonville, Florida, Urban Tidal Creek Restoration for Hogan's and McCoy's Creek. So those are just some examples from Florida. Next slide, please. So details on round 2, which is currently ongoing. The National Fish Passage Competition, which is that supports removing barriers like dams for migratory sea-run fish, that is closed. Our Tribal Fish Passage Competition is closed. Some of you may know, because you may have applied, for our Transformational Habitat Restoration Competition. That one just closed on the 17th. But still available if anybody would like to discuss project ideas or their current work on an application. Our Habitat Restoration for Tribes and Underserved Communities competition is still open, and that will not close until December 19th. So we took feedback from interested stakeholders to increase the caps of available awards for these competitions in terms of funding that you could request. And we also put greater emphasis on tribal opportunities. And so we have a link there. We have a lot of information available on the web. Next slide, please. So just here's some quick information on the competition that is still open. We will be giving out $45 million across the country for projects that advance restoration and climate resilience priorities that involve and specifically support tribes and underserved communities. So 20 million of this pot will go directly towards federally recognized tribe projects or subawards, and then another 25 million will be more broadly applied for state recognized or unrecognized tribes, as well as self-identified underserved communities and the partners that support them. So we will be giving out awards. You can ask for a minimum of $75,000 to a maximum of $3 million for these projects. These projects are seeking to support climate data gaps for underserved communities, vulnerability, and other types of resource management plans and strategic plans, pilot restoration projects, capacity building for communities that are interested in habitat restoration. Just a wide variety of projects can be supported, through these funds. Next slide, please. And lastly, I just wanted to run through this program because I think it's directly applicable to many of you in the room, is our Transformational Habitat Restoration competition that just recently closed. I'm available year-round to discuss project ideas and to help develop projects for folks. So feel free to contact me about this now if you want to develop something for our future competitions. This competition, we will be giving out at least $240 million. You can ask us for a minimum of 1 million and up to 25. It was already due, and this is seeking to support, like we said, transformational, large scale, or scale is relative. If you live on an island, say, so, or if you're in an urban system, but impactful, regionally important habitat restoration projects that can also support community resilience. I think that's it. I think that might be the last slide. So I'll take any questions, or feel free to contact me via email.
Can you hear Jessica?
I missed that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you repeat it?
I'll repeat it. So the question is, for the ones that are closed, are they annual?
So the ones that are closed are going to be at this funding level through BIL and IRA dollars. We will be hosting at least one more competition for all 4 of those that are closed. I don't know the exact date of that. I don't know if, so we did a competition in 22, we did a competition in 23. So you may logically expect that we would do one in 24 or 25. The RC has annually or biannually offered community-based restoration grant opportunities and competitions, and those have been smaller amounts of funds. So generally we have had between $4 and $30 or $50 million before BIL. So we do regularly offer competitions, and we will continue to do so, but at these large hundreds of million dollar scale, we'll have at least one more round.
Any other questions from our in-person audience? All right, let me look online. All right, doesn't look like we have any questions. Feel free to reach out to Chris if you have any questions about these opportunities. All right, so next up on the agenda, we wanted to briefly talk about potential topics for 2024. So if you noticed this time around, we tried to do a theme for each Habitat Restoration Consortium meeting. So we'll continue to try and do that, whether it be by habitat or by topical area. And the other thing that we were thinking would be really useful is to have potentially one of our meetings be a workshop or a learning opportunity. So I would love to hear your ideas on, whether you would like to run a workshop or you would like to collaborate with us on a workshop that you think would be useful for the habitat restoration community. And then also, I like seeing you guys in person. I would like to do maybe potentially one of the meetings during the year as an in-person meeting, and we could potentially move that around the watershed. So if anyone has a particular location that they think would be good to kind of showcase a habitat restoration project that's near to a meeting space, I'd love to hear those ideas as well. So feel free to contact me directly or shout out your ideas now. Okay. And then another potential topic that Tom brought up to myself and Jamie was potentially kind of linking some restoration and mitigation type restoration projects. So if you want to talk a little bit about, what you were thinking for that.
Sure, I'll stand up.
Yeah. Why don't you get here so you can get the microphone? Thanks.
All right, thank you. Yeah, the idea behind this topic is that there are 2 big groups that have the most wetland impacts. Okay, it's the DOT and the ports, right? And it makes sense, right? The DOT has to widen roads where they need to be widened, and there are wetlands and there are unavoidable impacts. So they generate a lot of impacts of wetlands, which means they need a lot of mitigation. And so for a while, the Water Management District was helping them out on that, and that really was a good program. But now the DOT is doing it on their own, and they just will try and find some land and do the mitigation. And I say they only will do that when there's not a mitigation bank. And there's a lot of mitigation banks out there, but there's not one in every ERP basin that has the needs that the DOT, and I'm not picking on them, but what they need, whether it's forested, or herbaceous, estuarine, or fresh. So in basins where there is no mitigation bank or it doesn't have the credits they need, if we knew what the kind of impacts, and the DOT knows what the impacts are for the next few years, they're planning ahead, we could help them say, look, okay, there is no mitigation bank in this particular basin. You have a forested or herbaceous freshwater wetland impacts. Let us help you pick a site. They have the funds to buy any site. They just did one a couple of years ago, and they just randomly picked. They came and talked to us, and we said, there's all these abandoned fish farms out there. There are already holes in the ground. Why don't we hook them all up and make a nice functional wetland out of these things? So they picked one and bought it, and that's great. But I think this group could provide guidance onto that and pick spots that are beneficial or adjacent to other restoration projects, because then either way it's going to happen. These could then actually benefit restoration projects that have been done in the past, or create a linkage between areas that are disconnected, whether it's for wildlife use or whatever. So I think the group here has enough knowledge of what's going on here that we could work with those entities and meet with them and find out where their needs are, and then see which basins there are no NIT banks. We're not trying to compete with anybody, but if they are just randomly picking spots, let's help them. Let's try and help them. And I think it's a win-win situation for both, because they get higher credits if they're adjacent to restoration or publicly owned lands, and we maybe can get some things that entities can't buy. DOT can open a checkbook and buy land pretty easily. So that's just a summary of that, and I think that would be a great discussion to have in 2024. That's it.
So when you say they just bought it, who's holding the title? Who's going to? Can you repeat that? When you say they just bought it, I assume it's not restoration credits, it's preservation credits, which also can offset roadway impacts. Who's holding title to that? Who's the managing entity?
And that's a good question. And for the one I'm talking about, they're going to do some restoration on it and preservation, and DOT owns it. They actually are the purchaser, and then what we would suggest that it gets in front of the CEO, but right at that point, they just have to meet their success criteria first.
Right, and then I would assume after that criteria is met, they're looking for an entity to take over fee title and long-term O&M. And then they're still, the only thing they're tied to is preservation credits, which is a huge opportunity. St. John's did preservation. We did projects, and we are tied in perpetuity to O&M permit requirements. But if we just do preservation, that opens up a huge opportunity for us to look at this very list, identify the properties. DOT's got a lot more money and flexibility in acquisition, and then that's huge potential to lay out a roadmap of realistic opportunities for acquisition, because we can't touch these properties anymore. We're 90% market value, and nobody's willing to sell at that. DOT can go well above. And if we could be the restoration, and I'm not saying we as in the district, but they collectively in here, that opens up huge opportunities that really are not on the table right now.
No, I think it's a good point. I think we should flush it out, make sure there's no hidden issues, but we can help drive what you're going to do mitigation. I think it's going to be done in a more holistic approach that wherever opportunities are buying land right now. And I'm sure they're meeting their criteria, but again, it's just trying to make something so that it's collectively fair.
Right. I think it's a great idea.
Do they need the conservation easement to get the conservation clearance?
Yeah, I think right before they have to put that at the hidden preservation, and that's what we want. We want to sell it, but either way, it's tied to a permit, even if it's successful, so I think it would be a secret.
All right, so that's a potential topic for next year. So if folks are interested in that, please reach out. Our last presentation before we go outside on our field trip, Erica Moulton from St. Pete College is going to come up and talk about the Living Shoreline project that they did here with some help from Tom as well. So let me bring up your presentation. For me there, and I'll type in our address. Okay, cool. The presentation should be pulled up down here. So.
Okay, Tunnel 23. Since some of you aren't here, okay, so everybody online should be able to see this guy as well, right? Yeah, everybody's
Yes.
good.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can.
Thank you. Okay, so last time at the end of the meeting online, I presented sort of on the who, what, and when for our Living Shoreline project. At this time, I'm going to do really quickly the where and the why, and then Tom's going to give you a couple minutes on the how. So the where is this map here. So the Bay Pine STEM Center is one of the campuses of the St. Petersburg College system. We are not a full campus. I don't have all the services, but I do have classrooms. I have the room you're in today. We have research labs. We have a full complement of laboratory support. But more importantly, we are a 50-acre campus. So although I'm just a single building, the college owns everything from the street out there all the way over to the mangroves and near the VA hospital, which means from here all the way over to here, this entire shoreline. And we also own, unfortunately, in my case, the submerged land rights to the lagoon out there. So that meant that I was completely responsible for all the derelict vessels. We didn't qualify for any of the governmental money that was available to assist, even though FWC did give us a few helpful hints about how to get it taken care of. So anyways, so that's the location. When I first arrived here on the property, when the college opened the building 6 years ago, it was pretty much how the other half of the property looks. So if you drive by, you'll see Brazilian peppers, lots of other invasive plants. But through this T-BERF grant, we've been able to restore between 7 and 9 acres. So we've kind of divided the property in half from where the building is down this main pathway, including this entire peninsula and this area here. So we're working on trying to restore the other half. So we'll be potentially applying for more T-BERF money. But this peninsula is the dredge fill from this lagoon. So the lagoon is man-made starting in about the 1930s and 40s. I can find dredge record. It's no longer dredged, but all of that spoil went to create this peninsula. It is between 11 and 17 feet higher in elevation than where the building is. So highly desirable to originally have put the campus out here. But obviously with all the new flood and sea level rise, it makes much more sense to have it here on stilts. But this elevation has allowed us to reintroduce gopher tortoises to the property. So we have done enough habitat restoration out here to release originally 10 tortoises, but we've increased our carrying capacity through our restoration to 11, and the permit allows us up to 15. So we're not hoping, but if they do have the need to release more tortoises, we have the space. We have a beautiful salt barren or salt turn. This main pathway will be graded and leveled. We've just purchased Moby Mat, which is in one of the classrooms right now. So we have an event in end of January for volunteers to come help us roll out the Moby Mat. And we do have a new dock and kayak launch system. And we have now acquired proper flotations across here. It's a motorized exclusion zone. So you can passively enter, anyone can, with anything as long as there's a motor. So we have lots of beautiful mangroves, and we have students studying and monitoring red tide with FWC on a weekly basis now. We have other students who are now monitoring the presence of Vibrio in oyster populations around the lagoon. So with that, yeah.
What's the depth out in that tidal lagoon?
I actually have the bathymetry data I've given to Tom. It'll appear in one of his slides, but yeah, I mean, it's 6 to 8 feet.
No
Yeah. No, not in here. This right here has seagrass. We had a student this summer who on a DoD grant, yeah, has mapped out, I think almost, I don't know, almost this entire shoreline all the way out to, it starts at Thalassia and Haliduli and goes out, or sorry, at Haliduli and Serengodium and then goes out to Thalassia out here.
Just to Tom's comment, I wonder if some point in the future that might be an opportunity if there's ever a DOT seagrass mitigation.
We have been monitoring this site out here with the Estro program and with Keep Pinellas Beautiful. I don't know if any of you heard about that float concert that started during COVID. So it's this ginormous barge system, and only by using social media we discovered that people were putting their kayaks and paddles and canoes and boats here along the seagrass and using the seagrass to hold on because they didn't bring anchors. So just from the pictures of everybody covered in seagrass, we were able to kind of track down the event, and the barge is usually floating out here, and they fill the area with the basin with boats. It's an outdoor live music festival, but they didn't have money to run their event this year, so we weren't sad. So, cool. So we'll walk out today and be able to check everything out if you'd like. So take it away, Mr. Tum.
Well, while we pull up the PowerPoint, yeah, I'm very happy to be able to work on this project. That's where I got to meet Erica, which has been great. And so I just want to give you a quick overview of how this project came about and what we're trying to do with it. Obviously, we know what living shorelines are. I don't have to put this in here, but we are trying to do something because there's a seawall out there. This was private property before, and there was houses out here, my understanding, and somebody put a seawall out a long time ago out there, and there's no need for a seawall here, right? This is not like a high energy site, but that's what was done in the past, and there's a lot of seawalls, okay? I'm talking to an informed audience, but you can tell that there are areas, and Pinellas County should be red because Boca Ciega Bay has over 70% seawalled. And a lot of that is man-made property like this, right? That was not here. That was all seagrass beds and intertidal zones. And so, we've done a lot of alterations around here. So where can we fix these things? There's a lot of living shoreline projects in this region. There's 58 of them. I've worked on more than 50 of those over these last almost 40 years. So these are all the different type projects. Some of them where we actually took seawalls out, right? That wasn't the most. That's like less than 15% of all these projects where we could take seawalls completely out, where they never should have been. And other ones are true living shorelines. And then there's projects like the Eulalie. There's a seawall there, and there's infrastructure. There's no room at all to pull back the bank. So the intent was to put a seawall enhancement project in, just so you know, Randall. That was the intent. Let's put something that gives some ecosystem services for the next 20, 25 years. Then the city's gonna have to start doing things because there's no room for anything to move up, and their infrastructure is right behind that. They're gonna have to raise their seawalls. They're gonna have to do something. But those seawall enhancement projects at least provide ecosystem services for the short term. So we already saw where this is. It's a man-made opening called the Hurricane Hole, and a lot of boats used to go in there and try and hide from storms, and then when they sunk, then somebody had to pull them out of there, and that was Erica's duties. But in green is very bad image here, but that shows you what the ownership is, and there's a lot of bay bottom that's owned by the campus. Here's to answer the question on the bathy. It's pretty shallow, okay, 4 feet in general, but there are seagrasses growing naturally along the shoreline here, very thin line of Haliduli in there. But otherwise, the rest of the area is pretty soft sediments. And there is a lot, it's deeper right at the entrance because of the flows coming in and out on the tidal exchange. Just give you some pictures of what these look like. And this is a low tide. Mostly you could just see the tops of these, but you can see these are pretty large sailboats that have been there for a long time. And it's very expensive. They try to float them out, they fall apart because they don't even have any integrity left. But pulling this stuff out in these barges takes a lot of money and time. The good news is now when you go over the bridge here, you look into this basin, there's not a single derelict vessel in here, and I hope that's still true. On the outside, there are some, But with the cable across, hopefully that's going to not be the case in the future. All right, so what were we going to do with this funding that we got from the SWARE program? And here is the master plan that was put together. There's a lot of things that need to be done in here. First of all, there's a lot of scour at this opening here, and that's a seawall section right here, and there's a lot of energy going through in there. So we don't have a lot of room to do much but protect some of that. That seawall is almost gone. Just put some rock in its place, and so there's not much we can do there except for that. Now, on the two areas where you can see blue on the top up here, we're going to take sections of the seawall out, right? I don't need a coastal engineer to do this project. A lot of our projects, we definitely work with coastal engineers, but there's not a lot of energy in here. So what's unique about this project, and we'll show you in a second, but this is the overall project. And like Erica said, it's kind of broken in two pieces. On the west here, with the line being the trail that we're going to walk down to, that's phase one. And so the funding for this project is to come up with a master plan for the entire site and implement phase one. So phase one was smaller in the construction because of the funding we had, but we were going to take two sections of seawall out, and then we're going to protect those areas where the wall is lower by putting oyster bags out there just to provide extra habitat. But phase two is where a lot of work's going to go on. Okay, there'll be again some areas where the seawall will be taken out, some protection put in, some marsh put in, oyster domes. That's going to take some funding to implement, but it's fully permitted now. So phase one is in the ground, and you'll get to see that, and that's just those two areas here. But let's.
Sorry, just staring at people that have money.
Okay, sorry. And this is just a close-up of phase one again. This is, again, what's been put in. And then phase two is the future potential with some funding. So let's take a look what's unique about this project. And what's unique about this project is there's salt turnout here. You wouldn't expect that in this area, and Boca Ciega has very little of its salt turn left. So it's very important to keep and protect this project. So we think, from just looking at historic aerials, this salt turn was partly derived because the seawall was put in. Because the seawall continues up into the mangroves here, but under a super high tide, water would go around and then we couldn't easily leave. And that helped create the hypersaline conditions to make that nice salt turn there. So we can't just take the wall completely out, then we're going to lose our salt turn, right? And so it was a very tricky thing to say, all right, we know we want to take some of this wall out. The cap is in bad shape. But we don't want to lose the salt turn, right, in the long term. And again, when you design these things, we're designing for today's conditions, but we're also thinking ahead, what's going to be here as sea level rises, and you have to pick which scenario you're looking at, and mostly we're looking at a 2060 scenario, and so trying to keep that all in mind when we're looking at this. So here's a close-up. You can see the salt turn. Most of that salt turn sitting at 1.8 in AVD. 88. And so what we're trying to do is, at least for the short term, we don't want to lose that salt turn. So it just so happened, if you take the cap off, which was the worst part of the seawall, that was about 1.8. So that was the objective, and that was what was permitted to do. This is, again, close up of the construction plans for phase two. And you can see a little bit more on that detail on here. And I wanted to put this picture in because you can see the water behind the wall. Okay, on the super high tides, that's what's really creating the salt turn, or at least keeping it in place. And so we don't want to lose that. If we took the wall completely out, then water would go in and out, and we wouldn't have the hypersaline conditions potentially. Here are some photos at a super low tide of the wall from the floating dock, and you can see there are some oysters, a lot of oysters in here. For the salinity is really good for that, but you can see the bad shape of that wall. And so this is an old wall. They try to use these jackhammers and stuff. They couldn't break that wall. I mean, they would be still out there trying to do it. They had to bring heavy equipment in to try and take that cap off, because that concrete gets harder over time, and they built walls pretty strong in those days. A lot of rebar in there. So you can see now where the wall, this section has been taken out, and then there's another section that's just off the picture here, and we're trying to get to that elevation so that it holds just a little bit of water in there when the tide goes out. This is when it was just done, it's kind of dirty and the way it looks. There's a lot of rebar we had to cut and remove to get out of here. And then we sealed the top of the wall and then put rock on there. So water can still go through here. Water can come in now and at least not all run out. And so what you see in the foreground, it's obviously disturbed, but it's part of the salt tern habitat. And so I just want to go through this quickly. We're going to see it firsthand and we can talk about it while we're out there. But I wanted to show you the generation of the plans and how we had to look at not just protecting the shoreline and sea level rise, but we have a salt tern here that we don't want to lose and maybe at least enhance it or at least give it another couple decades before it has room to migrate. And what's good about this property, there is room to migrate up here. And it'll take a long time and all the ecosystems, at least in the intertidal zone, can move up. And when we go down here, you'll see on the whole east side is solid Brazilian pepper. Okay, that phase two is mostly removing a lot of pepper and putting natural habitat in this transitional zone. So that hasn't happened yet. But on this west side, you hopefully won't see any pepper because we've done a lot of removal. And Erica just can add in anything.
Yeah, I'll go back on the camera here. So I did make one promise to some community partners that we've used. Our area is blocked off by highway, right? There's not a lot of access for wildlife to get here unless obviously it can fly in. And so one of the things that we've been really cognizant of is also returning the wildlife to the habitat. And so although we've reintroduced gopher tortoises through the WAIF process at FWC, we've also reintroduced lots of other critters as well. And so I'd encourage you, and I'd like to share that using some of the wildlife rehabilitation centers in your area when you do projects that might be excluded from wildlife passage opportunities like we don't have here, it's a great way to reintroduce the other parts of the natural ecosystem that should be present in a living shoreline. So we work with Birds and Helping Hands. They've released a lot of shorebirds here. We work with Squirrely AF. They do possums and raccoons and a few other small mammals and obviously squirrels. We have a couple of burrowing owls that have been released out here, have taken residence in the gopher tortoise burrows, etc. So just I wanted you to think about that in terms of some of your projects as a way to get wildlife back into where they belong when you're excluded from passageways like we are here because the highway goes through. So that was the last part I wanted. And we have students who monitor all of them with field cameras and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of them out there, those wildlife rehabbers, and they're always looking for spots. So any questions? Yeah. Yeah. You want to, yeah. And so I will tell you that the college faculty, some of them use barren, B-A-R-R-E-N, salt barren and salt tern interchangeably in their coursework. So you want to how you define it professionally, make sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a difference. I've just started calling them salt terns and I can't get out of it. Most people call them salt barrens. It's anything that's above 45 parts per thousand in the soil. Some of the research that we've done, we did a 3-year study on salt barrens or salt terns, because if you go out there, they're pretty desert-like, right, for most of the year. But there's about 8 to 10 days of the year when they are flooded, okay? And as that water recedes, all the fish that got up in there, I mean, all the tactile abelfaunal species are just having bonanza. And we've seen literally hundreds of birds in there for a few days. But the rest of the year, as far as abelfaunal, there's not a lot of use of them. So they're very important and critically imperiled for this area. And so they are interesting habitats. And to have one off at Boca Ciega Bay still in place is a unique thing.
They're really pretty. They're very glistening in the sunlight too. They're all the salt that's dried on the surface and lots of fiddler crabs. And, yeah. Yeah.
Marcus.
Just curious if there are any issues with the flooding we had with Hurricane Dale.
No, I can't hear.
Any hurricane flooding issues? No. That peninsula that sticks out, it does exactly what it's supposed to do in terms of like a mangrove shoreline. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but it ends up. I've worked with the Tampa Bay Estuary program on, they have their would you give a day for the bay, but we call it WOOD because any piece of dry lumber that is ended up in the bay somehow ends up on my peninsula. We hauled out 3,600 pounds of lumber the first time. Right now I have some 12 by 12s that are 5 foot long that are brand new. I don't know where they came from, but this last storm that went through. So I have 45 of them if you're interested in a building project. My new kayak racks that are downstairs, are all free lumber that washed ashore during the last storm. Yeah, my trailer's in the parking lot now because I had enough lumber wash ashore. I think people just do projects and think it won't wash into the water, but yeah, it all comes here. Yeah, we had our construction.
From removing the cap and the exposed soil on high tides, do you have any impacts from sediment washing out to glaciers?
I haven't seen any sand wash over.
And now with that washing, everything kind of settled in.
Yeah, the question is about anything washing over the seawall, any sediment loss over the seawall with the cap gone, and we haven't seen it. No. Yeah. Sorry, just making sure everybody who was online could hear the question. Good. All right.
Well, thanks to everyone online for joining us and everybody here. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.